Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday. Hope you had a great week as always. Obviously, a little bit different where I'm including the cover photo, if you will, is the painting that it's actually really cool. I participated in a spiritual spa day, and it was just like 15, 20-minute little snippets, I guess you could say, appointments. And this one lady, she told to do spirit animals, she'll actually do this little quick painting. And so that's what that painting is from that day, which is super cool. And as I was about to film this, I was like, oh my gosh, the horse. Now, horses okay, for mediums, oftentimes when mediums get symbology, it's a really interesting thing because everybody will interpret symbols differently. And part of the work and the art of a medium is to figure out not only what that symbol means to us, but then also the context for that person, because obviously it could mean something different. And so horses for me, and especially in this painting, right, where it's running and it's like kind of leaping in the air, looking like it's having fun, horses mean freedom. And I think of, like a wild horse almost, where they embrace their wildness, and they don't know anything different, right? And they are running like full speed just for fun through the field or through a forest, whatever. And it just embodies freedom and fun. And that's so apropos to what I want to talk to you guys about, because it seems it's a little bit different in a way where I'm not just talking about freedom, but what I want to talk about is that so many of us want this emotional freedom where we can just really be ourselves. We can, let our wild side out, but then we can also let our sensitive side out. Like all of our sides we want to be able to let out. But oftentimes we feel really contained. We feel like we can't do that societally, whether that's society, relationships, whatever. We just feel almost contained. But so there's this real feeling of when we go through the journey of self-discovery, self-exploration, and really personal responsibility, and embrace who we are and allow that side to shine and come out unapologetically. It's the most magical, beautiful thing ever. But to get there, guys, the key really is to make sure that we do not allow our light to go out. Now, I call this the light of life. And this isn't just like I made this up, okay? I've been reading a lot about this lately. But the light of life, I want to talk about this because we all have the light of life within us, okay? Now, I think of it like, I don't know if any of you have ever put down like a beloved pet, but it's the wildest thing when you watch their eyes and like you can literally see the consciousness and that light literally leave them. And it's heartbreaking. I don't even want to go there. I'm going to cry. But it's so beautiful, right? And that's oftentimes what I mean. Like that to me is the most tangible form of seeing that light that I've ever experienced. Now, everybody would have their own unique experiences with that. But what I want to talk about is that we all have this light, okay? I think and visualize it of like a candle with like a little beautiful flame that's flickering. And when it's like really strong and healthy and like a really beautiful light, we feel strong. I think that's when we feel the freedom. We allow ourselves to go in. It's when we have stronger boundaries. And so it's really important, guys, to literally start thinking of ourselves and our energy and our life as, well, not even just like looking at it, but embracing this idea that we all have a light, okay? We all have this little flame. And it is our responsibility to figure out how to keep that flame going. Because when it's out, it is so much harder to get it going again, right? Like, obviously, if it was a tangible, materially tangible candle, we could just take a lighter, we can light it. Or if it's just a little flame, we can maybe give it more, breathe on it, give more oxygen, whatever. But emotionally, that's a little bit harder, right? We can't just go grab something and be like, oh, here we go emotionally. And so oftentimes we try to reignite that with unhealthy things, right? We might go and eat things that we think make us feel better, and maybe for a little second it kind of does, but it doesn't actually reignite that light. Now, maintenance is easier, guys, than when you're trying to reignite it. And so I really encourage you to start thinking about your everyday thing. So what are you doing right now that diminishes that light versus what really expands that light, okay? So when you are feeling burnt out, are you prioritizing, and I know this is easier said than done, guys, we all have busy lives, but when you are almost like at that wall of exhaustion, are you taking even half an hour for yourself and carving it out and making it a non-negotiable? Why? Because what are you going to do for people if your little light is just like smaller and smaller and smaller? And if you continue to ignore it, it's going to go out, guys. It's going to be, that's where we end up in depression and complete depletion. And it's like, what can you do to really honor and respect that light that you have within you? What is going to keep that flame really warm and going and hot and increasing it, right? Like, what challenges do you need to overcome? And that is important. I personally do that through self-exploration. I'm always reading books. I like to listen to podcasts, YouTube videos, counselors, that kind of stuff. To me, that is really important because it gets rid of those things that that I'm either tangibly doing in my life through habits, or maybe that mentally or still and emotionally still there, that are kind of like dripping water on that light and diminishing it. And so I encourage you guys to start thinking about that kind of thing, because here's the thing. If you are in a position right now where you're either feeling depressed or you feel like you have lower energy, it's because your light is really dim. Okay, that's what's happening. And so part of the journey is figuring out how to re-get that going. Now, if you're somebody who you feel like it's completely out, and I'm thinking of people who are extremely depressed right now, obviously, I say this, and it might seem, I don't mean this flippantly, but of course, asking people for help, and appropriate people, so counselors, again, is really important, maybe your doctor, people in your like close social circle who you have a lot of trust with, asking them for help. And it's really important, guys, in this moment, because oftentimes we think that a cry for help is posting something on Facebook that is maybe a little bit like really exposing and vulnerable. But here's the problem, is that it opens, you open up the door to that light, that protective layer. You open a door to that light. And so you open it up for people who, might not necessarily be able to actually help you get that light going again, and they actually might pour water on it, right? And whether that's intentional or not, it's just that you can't really expect people to know how to help you with your light unless they're close friends and they know you really intimately. And so that's really, really important, okay? But with this, here's the other thing, is that you have to be willing to receive the help. Now, again, I'm not saying this flippantly. I've dealt with depression. I've been through it. I get what it feels like, and I understand 100% what it's like when you're so in it, because you don't even want to hear it almost. It's like you want to hear it. You want somebody to come and really help you get that flame going again, but it's almost like you just can't even, like, I don't know, you just don't even have the energy and the capacity to be able to do that, And so I understand that, but I mean this with full capacity of my heart, that you have to receive help, because I know a lot of people who have opened up to me about struggle, and they, I've been talking and I tried to help them through. And when I shared my personal stories of vulnerability and connection to really make sure they felt alone, because that's what they were talking about, is feeling alone, and they don't know what to do. But then when I opened myself up to do that, it was like they completely stopped listening. And I was like, well, I just shared like this really vulnerable thing about myself, and there's something really personal to help you, and then you just totally rejected it. And so there are times where people are in the place where they're just not willing to receive the help, and that's a really real place. And if you're there, obviously you do you, what I mean? Like, I understand it's really hard sometimes to do that. But I want to talk about that because of the fact that if you think about it from the light perspective, you have to receive the help, okay? Because that's like the lighter coming in and helping you reignite that candle. Now, you might find out, like, once you have a little bit more flame, that you don't necessarily need that help, that's not necessarily serving you, and that's okay, but you just need to get that flame going even just a little bit, guys, so that you have the capacity and that little bit of warmth to be able to continue to grow it, okay? So please receive that, because here's the thing, and this is not just like for people, so I'm kind of switching gears here, people with like just going in general with people who have really dim lights, or even if it's been out. Now, what often happens when people are here and they don't go through the work of reigniting it themselves and receiving help from people to reignite it, is that they go and they look for other people's light. Okay? They go and they look for other people's light. Now, this is what happens when people are trying to take from you, because they feel so lifeless and they don't know how to restart their light, that they really do start going in almost like, it's like they want to take other people's light in order to feel that light again. But here's the thing, it's not their light. So I think of this with emotional or physical abuse and violation, right? It's literally taking that light, and you can see it. You can see the difference when people have gone through this, of how that light dims. I see it with people who are feeling really empty and depressed, not necessarily depressed, but really empty and really lost, and then they're trying to find a relationship or a partner that is going to be able to almost fix them. That's the same thing, guys. They're not going into it to have a healthy relationship. They think they are, but what's actually happening is, and why these relationships never work out, is because they're going into it with the idea of taking this person's light, because they want to feel that warmth. They want to feel that light from the person. But that is not healthy, guys. And it's not okay. Even, I mean, we've all done it, okay? There's no judgment. We've all done it. But it's still not okay. So it's really important, if you feel like that energy and that light is just really little, maybe check yourself and see when you're trying to, when you're expecting, or whether it's conscious or not, other people to start lighting that flame for you, okay? Because that's really not okay. It really, unfortunately, the good news and the bad news is it's up to you, you know? But it's not up to you to do it alone. It's just up to you to do it with the appropriate people where there's trust, and it's like they're giving you, they're sharing their light with you as opposed to you taking their light. And that's a significant difference, okay? And when I say that they're sharing their light, this comes through close relationships that you've developed a lot of trust and love with. So this is people who, they're not just doing it because it's a forced relationship, like, I'm just trying to think, like a coworker or maybe a family member where you are like, oh, it's our family dynamic, you know, like we're family. Our family should support each other. Well, guys, like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't mean that means they have to share their light with you, because it's not necessarily appropriate. Like, there's kind of sometimes forced relationships where people think that means that they get to go to that person for the light, but it actually can really create a lot more resentment and strife within your family dynamic and relationships, because the person who is almost having their light taken, they feel it, you know, and they feel violated emotionally, and sometimes they can't even put their finger on it, and then it's just resentment grows, right? And so when it comes to healthy relationships, it's having people who are more permission based, okay? And this is like, Brene Brown talks about this. It's like 5 people maximum, guys. 5 people, okay? So put that in perspective, where you can go and talk to them. And it's like, you walk into that relationship, and because of course we're never always perfect. We're gonna have moments where our light is dimmer, right? I mean, that's just life. But it's like, you have, I think of, say, a spouse. You have a really healthy relationship with your spouse or your significant other, and it's like you're feeling down, and then you can go, and then that spouse supports you through that, and it's like they're willing to. I think of it like you're in this really protected room, and then you both come together and you both open your little like doors that are protecting your light, and then they just like literally take out that candle and share it with you to just give you a little bit more heat on your light, right? But it's an intimate experience. It's really a beautiful thing, and that's when you come together, and that's when you feel those really deep connections of love and respect. What happens though is if you have somebody who's coming in and they're like, oh my God, I need light. They open their door and they start trying to claw into your door and take your light. And you're like, please stop, because it's violating. I didn't give you permission to do this. And you see it when sometimes people like floodlight you, where it's like, you're scrolling on Facebook and all of a sudden it's like these people post these like really intense posts that you just don't even know how to respond to. And then you feel awful because you're like, I should be more compassionate. I should help people through this, all these different things, but at the same time, you just can't help but emotionally feel like something, just like you were violated in a way. And that's what happens when people just like, they're super empty, and then they inappropriately want your light, right? And it's not permission based, it's taking. And so it's very important. So not only the responsibility of taking care of your own light, but then also not taking from others. And then also, the last thing, and I know we're getting a little long here, so I'm going to tighten this up, but lastly and quickly, is learning who to share your light with, my friends. We live in a society that tells us oftentimes that we have to be something and that we have to always be infinitely available for people. That is false. It is our light. It is our decision who we share it with, okay? And that is obviously a journey to get to the point where you can fully embrace that and apply it to your relationships and people. But I promise you guys, it is not selfish. It is the most healthy thing you can possibly do, because when you actually start giving your light to people who you want to out of your own desire to want to, as opposed to making you feel like, as opposed to you feeling like you have to, it's going to be energizing instead of depleting, right? It's going to energize your light as opposed to depleting it. So just be aware of that. And that is obviously dealt with through boundaries. So with that, guys, I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. And I love you guys. Have a really great week.